All right, today we're going to be talking about supply, which is a different way of thinking. Our I can statement today is I can analyze changes in supply and changes in quantity supplied. So just like last time when we learned about demand, there's a difference between the two, a change in supply and a change in how much is supplied. We're going to get to it, okay? But when we think about supply, we have to think differently. We have to think differently because you and I probably don't own businesses and probably aren't supplying people anything. For the most part, you and I are consumers who demand things, but we have to put ourselves in the eyes of a business owner and think about supply, okay? So change your perspective to think about you being a producer. And if you're a producer, your main goal is to sell your stuff for a very high price, okay? So let's say that people really, really want your good. If they really, really want your good, then they're going to pay a high price for it. We want to produce a lot of that good so that it will sell and we will get paid lots of money, okay? So it's just a different way of looking at it. The more people will pay for our stuff, we want to produce more so that when they pay for it, we make lots of money. Let's talk about the law of supply. We had a law of demand. Here's the law of supply. The law of supply is basically saying an increase in P leads to an increase in quantity supplied. If the price of a good increases, that means I want to supply more of that good so I can sell more and make more money. The law of supply also says a decrease in P leads to a decrease in quantity supplied. If I'm making a good and the price goes down or people want less of it, then I'm not going to want to make much because then if I sell it, I still don't make a lot of money. So we can, again, you don't have to memorize supply schedule or anything like that, but we can kind of look at this on what economists like to call a supply schedule. Here's an example. Let's say I want to buy a Maytag washer, which is the type of washer I have in my house, or I want to supply one. Sorry, we're suppliers, not consumers right now. If I want to supply a Maytag washer, if the washer's going to sell for $1,000, I want to make 15 of those washers and sell all of them so I can make 15 grand, right? If a washer's going to sell for $800, I still want to make quite a few, but I don't want to make 15 anymore. I want to make 7 because I would rather sell it for $1,000, not $800. So I'm going to make less, okay? If it's selling for $600, I'll make like 3 of them and sell them, but is it worth my time and money? If a washer sells for $300, I'm not wasting my time making a bunch of them. I'm just going to make one and try and sell it real quick. I want to sell more of high-priced items than low-priced items, okay? And here's basically what this chart is telling you. As prices decrease, producers don't want to waste their resources making a good that will not sell for much. We want to make a good that's going to sell for the big bucks, and we want to make lots of them and sell them for the big bucks. Imagine when you're thinking about supply, you want to make as much money as possible. Pretend you are the business owner. If we graph this table that I just gave to you, and again, Miss Keller made some mistakes. That's just what she does, right? This is quantity. There's not supposed to be price. If we graph that supply schedule on this chart, remember, if I'm selling my washer for $1,000, whoo, buddy, I want to sell 15 of them and make 15 grand. If I'm selling it for $800, 600, 300, I don't even want to waste my time. You see why the supply curve shifts upward. Sorry, the supply curve slopes upward. Okay? If I'm a producer, I want to sell my goods and lots of them at a high price. So we're going to be looking at change in quantity supplied. How much suppliers actually supply goods to be sold. So again, we can graph, we can guess, we can predict based on a graph what suppliers are going to do and how consumers and producers will respond to change in prices. So a change in quantity supplied happens when price changes and it moves along the supply curve. So we go from this point down to this point. Remember, the law of supply applies. let's take a look at this second part right here because that's what's on the graph. A decrease in price. You see our price equilibrium was here. And then price decreased, and I indicated it with an arrow, and that means it hit the supply curve at a different spot, and quantity ends up decreasing as well. Label that with Q sub 1, label that with P sub 1. So a decrease in price leads producers to decrease the quantity they make. If the price of the good I'm selling goes down, I don't want to waste my time making as many. So the quantity I supply is less. Let's say that the price of my good goes up. That would be a new curve this way. Goes up from equilibrium. I would label this, P sub 2 and Q, I just can't do anything without making a mistake, right? Q sub 2. All of a sudden, if the price increases, I want to make more. Follow this over here. I want to make more that I can sell more for monies, okay? That's the name of the game, money for producers. So let's go back to the market of the graph is French fries. French fries, French fries. If the price of the French fry goes up, what happens to quantity supplied? If price goes up, the law of supply says that we follow it down, over and down. Quantity went up as well. Price went up, quantity supplied went up. Price went up, quantity supplied went up. That's because if the price increases, I want to sell more. I want to supply more and make more money. Again, let's look at French fries. Let's say the price of French fries goes down and I'm the McDonald's owner. The price of French fries goes down, I follow, here's the first equilibrium, then the price goes down, I got to follow it down. We've got a new Q sub 1 and a P sub 1. What happened? It went down on both sides, right? Because if the price goes down, I don't want to sell as much. I'd rather sell a good that is expensive and sell lots of it than a good that's cheap and sell not a lot of it, right? So if the price decreases, I don't want to waste my time making a lot of that thing. All right, so we just looked at a change in quantity supplied. That is different than a change in supply, which is what we're going to look at next, okay? So, change in supply is completely different. Change in supply happens when outside forces other than price shift the supply curve. And remember, we know it's not really a curve. It's more like a line, but we call it a curve, okay? So the supply curve shifts when supply changes, and it creates an entirely new curve. So here's an example. Here's the original supply curve, and then supply shifted this way. It increased, and we labeled it S sub 1. Or here is the original supply curve, and the supply curve decreased, and we labeled it S sub 2. Okay? An increase in supply shifts the curve right, like you see. And we indicate with arrows. We put a new line, and we put S sub 1. A decrease in supply shifts the curve left. So this is a decrease because the numbers are smaller over here. We label it with arrows and S sub 2. Okay? So why would supply shift? Remember, a change in price leads to a change in quantity supplied. Other things change just supply, and these are those other things. Okay? So, what happens? What changes the supply curve? A change in input cost. What is an input cost? An input cost is what goes into a good. So let me give you an example. Salsa. Tomatoes and garlic go into salsa. If the price of tomatoes goes up, then I'm going to make less salsa, and that's going to change my supply and shift it left. It's going to lower my supply, right? If the price of garlic goes down, I can make more salsa, right? And I'm going to supply more. The next thing that changes supply is change in technology, okay? If I can make goods faster, then I'm going to make more. If I can make goods faster, I'm going to make more, right? If I get new computers at my factory that run robots that make the cars. I'm going to make more cars. I'm supplying more cars. Also, a change in number of producers. If there's 4 Mexican restaurants in town, is there a lot more salsa in town? Yes, that's the increased supply of salsa. If all the Mexican restaurants burn down in town, then we have decreased the amount of salsa, decreased the supply of salsa that's going on. Okay, what about a change in government policy? A change in government policy, let's say that the government outlaws something, that's going to decrease the supply. Or the government gives a tax credit to all Italian restaurants. I don't know, y'all. I'm stuck on food. If the government gives a tax credit to all Italian restaurants, they're going to have more money and they're going to increase their supply. Okay? A change in human capital. And remember, human capital is, let me shorten it into words, is all the training and education and potential of humans, okay? So a change in human capital would be we train our people better and they can make better goods or make more goods, okay? So this, a positive training and more education would lead to an increase in supply, because we train our people to make goods faster or something like that. And then a change in productivity. This kind of goes with changing technology. If we can just make things faster or make things better or use robots or something like that, then we're going to increase supply, okay? Or if all of a sudden our people, like in our factory, like all of them lose their left hand or something. I don't know. That'd be really weird. But that would decrease our supply, right? Because they're not being as productive. They're not being as efficient. Keep in mind, this is the reason for the supply curve shifting. The actual curve moves, okay? The change in the price of the good itself does not change the supply. That changes quantity supplied, which is what I wrote up here. Okay, moving on. So let's look at some examples that, again, have nothing to do with graphs. We're just going to look at it. And we're going to look at Mexican restaurants again, okay? So all of these have to do with Mexican restaurants. Number 1, the price of tomatoes goes down. If the price of tomatoes goes down, doesn't tomatoes go into the making of salsa? So if the price of tomatoes goes down, I can buy more tomatoes and make more salsa. So this would be increase in supply due to a decrease in input costs. And I could write it out as a sentence like that, or I could do my economic shorthand. An increase in supply due to a decrease in input costs. Okay. Number 2, 3 more Mexican restaurants open up in town. Doesn't that mean there's going to be more Mexican food in town? Yes. That'd be an increase in supply of Mexican food in town. Why? An increase in supply due to an increase in number of producers. Increased supply due to increased number of producers. That would be the economic shorthand way of saying it, okay? Number 3, an automated avocado cutter and depitter is invented. And depitting an avocado is my nemesis, okay? So if we bring in a new machine that cuts the avocado and takes out the pit, that is new technology, right? We're going to make avocado guacamole much faster. So that is a change in technology. And is it a good change? Are we making more? Yes. Increase in supply due to change in technology. That's not how you spell technology. Tech. Okay? All right, number 4. The government slashes taxes on alcohol, including tequila. And if you've ever been to a Mexican restaurant on Thirsty Thursday, then you know that margaritas are made with tequila. Okay? So, if the government slashes taxes on alcohol, meaning that Mexican restaurants have to pay less to buy that alcohol to put the tequila in the margaritas, all of a sudden they're going to make more margaritas with tequila. So this is an increase in supply due to a change in government policy. All right, let's put it on a graph. Here's some practice problems. I think I have 5 of them. And again, they all have to do with peanut butter. So would the following costs apply to increase, and an increase is a shift right, or decrease, which would be a shift left? Then you need to draw it on the graph, and then we have to write out why it changed, okay? So draw it on the graph, write out why it changed. There are 2 parts to every question. Number 1, first question, first scenario on the peanut butter graph. Peanut farmers get cheap loans from the government. Ooh, there's that word, government. That's a hint, 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 hint. So peanut farmers now get cheap loans, low interest rates from the government. Is that going to cause them to make more peanuts or less peanuts? More peanuts. So we draw on the graph first. Our supply curve shifts this way. We label it supply sub 1. We put arrows so we know that it shifted. And then we write out why it shifted. Supply increases due to change in government policy. And you could write it out in a sentence, or you could write it out in economic shorthand like I just have, okay? Number 2, change in supply again. All about peanut butter. Sorry about that. A drought wipes out 50 peanut farms. Are there going to be more or less peanut butter if 50 peanut farms are all wiped out? Less peanut butter. So supply shifts to the left, which means there's less peanut butter. We label it supply sub 1. We label it with arrows showing it is shifting left. And then we write out why. Supply decreases due to decrease in number of producers. There are less people making peanut butter because their peanut butter farms were wiped out. Okay? Number 3. Again, peanut butter. A shell cracking machine is invented and deshells peanuts 50% faster. Oh my goodness. So are we going to get more or less peanut butter if they're 50% faster due to the deshelling machine? We're going to get more peanut butter. So the original curve is here. We shift it to the right because that means increase. Label it supply sub 1. Label it with arrows showing that it shifted. And we can't just do it on the graph. We have to show over here why. So supply increases due to change in tech. You could also, tech, why do you keep misspelling that, Miss Keller? You could also say that this 50% faster means it's a change in productivity. Some of them might have multiple reasons why. It might be 2 of the 6 reasons why. If you give me one of the right reasons why, I will give you the points, right? Number 4. Peanut butter factory workers are all trained in proper creamy versus crunchy peanut butter production techniques. Factory workers are all trained. Ooh, that sounds like human capital. So if we're trained and we become better at our jobs, is the factory going to produce more or less peanut butter? It's going to produce more. So we take the original supply curve, move it outward. We're increasing supply, label it S sub 1. Label with arrows to indicate that it moved. Then you have to write out why. Supply increases due to change in human capital. Okay, so you can write it out in a sentence or you can use your economic shorthand. Okay, last one. Number 5, we're still on peanut butter. Jif, peanut butter producer, factories want to give all their assembly line workers better healthcare benefits. Now, I know you're thinking, Miss Keller, what does that have to do with peanut butter? I don't care about healthcare, okay? This is in politics. Everything is peanut butter. That was dumb, but it's true. So, if the Jif factory wants to give their workers better healthcare benefits, that costs them money. Every worker's paycheck, every benefit costs them money, and everything that costs a factory money is an input cost. So yes, their healthcare does have to do with peanut butter. So if they're spending more money on input costs, can they spend a lot of money on peanut butter? No, there's going to be less peanut butter made. So here's the original supply curve. We shift it inward to the left. We indicate with arrows that it went that way and label it as sub 1. Okay, and then we have to write out why. Supply decreases. Supply decreases due to increase in input costs. So just because it has nothing to do with peanut butter doesn't mean it doesn't impact peanut butter, right? The Jif factory dude said these workers deserve better. We need to pay them better and give them better benefits, but that means we have less money to spend on making peanut butter. Supply decreases. All right, you're going to be doing some of these practices in class. Remember, do it on the graph, then explain why it changes. Thanks, guys.